to our non-Indigenous brothers and sisters, don't be afraid of urban reserves.
Tonight, after a long battle, the old Kapyong Barracks are finally turned over to Treaty 1 First Nations.
At this time of joy in our lives, it's always tainted every year by anti-seal hunt protests, every year.
And the story behind why Inuit must defend their sustainable way of life. Good evening, I'm Beverly Andrews. Treaty 1 chiefs gathered in Winnipeg today to ink a deal with Canada to hand over a massive unused army base to convert into an urban reserve. Melissa Hansen was on hand for the historic signing.
It took 17 years of fighting with Ottawa, but today, the 7 First Nations of Treaty 1 got what they've been fighting for.
This was bound to happen right from the day that it was declared surplus.
Known as the Kapyong Barracks in Winnipeg's Tuxedo neighborhood, the sprawling 64-hectare property has sat empty since 2004, when the Canadian government relocated the military unit that was stationed here. The Federal Treasury Board wanted to sell it, but Treaty 1 nations went to court saying they had first dibs on the surplus property under treaty land entitlement. They won the challenge, but it was appealed and the back and forth continued until today. Dennis Meaches is chief of the Long Plains First Nation.
Canada. Although we had to do some convincing over the past 17 years or so, we do acknowledge Canada and acknowledge the ministers and the Prime Minister of this country for working with us towards what I believe will be a game changer for this country.
The deal is just the first step in converting the property to an urban reserve, and the old military buildings need to be torn down to make way for the new economic zone. But the Treaty 1 chiefs say what happens to the land will benefit everyone.
We can guarantee you that we will work in partnership as we've always done, and to change the mindset of people that believe that urban reserves or the treaty land entitlements are something that may not be wanted.
Assembly of First Nations National Chief Perry Bellegarde was on hand for the deal signing.
What this represents today is an opportunity to create economic growth, economic wealth and employment in an urban setting. It's good.
He had some fun with those who don't understand what urban reserves are all about.
As well to our non-Indigenous brothers and sisters, don't be afraid of urban reserves. Don't be afraid. We have over 100 urban reserves in Saskatchewan, and they create jobs and employment opportunities. They're economic development zones. You know, I remember 30 years ago when we first started talking about urban reserves, we had to get rid of the misconceptions. Everybody thought, oh boy, urban reserves, there's going to be a bunch of turned over cars and skinny dogs running all over. No, it's not like that. This is a good thing.
We've fought long enough. Give us what is rightfully ours. Give us our land, give us the opportunity, and we'll show you how we can prosper as a people.
Minister of Natural Resources Jim Carr is the Member of Parliament for Winnipeg South Centre. He said he's a 5-minute bike ride from what will be Winnipeg's newest and by far largest urban reserve.
You are our new neighbors. And in a community where I have lived my whole life, I can't tell you how excited I am to welcome you to our neighborhood. And to know that we will build this neighborhood together in partnership with a shared understanding of the aspirations we have for our children and for our grandchildren. And to know that we are always stronger together than we are apart.
And we would like to hear what you have to say about this or any other story. Here's how to contact us. Send us an email to news@aptn.ca, like our APTN National News Facebook page, follow us on Twitter @APTN News, or go to our website, aptnnews.ca. The family of 2 missing men in the Mohawk community of Aquanasi are looking for answers. They're calling on help to locate their loved ones. Annette Francis has more on this story.
This is a scene that has played out many times for Kenny Leaf's family over the past 3 months. They're hoping that by keeping his face out there, someone will come forward and say something.
It's like you're always looking. I work for home care, and I drive all over the reserve. When I drive, it's like I'm always looking. The fields, ditches, wood piles.
50-year-old Kenny Leaf has been missing since early January. Akwesasne is a unique area. It straddles 2 provinces and the Canadian and American border. According to sister-in-law Jennifer Leaf, that's added to the frustration.
Initially, when his daughter tried to file a missing person report with the American police of our reservation, they wouldn't take a missing person report in the beginning. And so it's infuriating that we have one community, but we're dealing with so many different entities of a system that should be cohesive, and it's not.
This isn't the first family member who's gone missing.
Timmy Benedict Leaf, he's been missing since February 1st of 2013. And, you know, it's over 5 years. And
no leads.
Nothing that, again, leads to anything.
That's why the family has conducted their own search efforts.
In fields and marshes, along water, along the river. And it's such a mind-boggling experience when the sun goes down and I'm walking back to my car and I'm heartbroken because it's another day gone.
They've also held fundraisers, including a bake sale and online auction. Yeah. Kenny's sister, Marilyn Francis, says those funds will be offered for a reward.
Just if anybody knows something, please come forward, help us. We need to put Kenny to rest. Same with Timmy.
According to the Akwesasne Mohawk Police, the investigations for both Kenny and Timmy are ongoing. They've partnered with other agencies to conduct air searches and gain access to a dive team. Anna Francis, APTN National News, Akwesasne.
How can you tell it's spring in Nunavut? Inuit are gearing up to battle international celebrities that want to end the seal hunt. APTN's Kent Driscoll sat down with a celebrated Nunavut documentary filmmaker and found out that fighting the same battle every year can get tiring.
Springtime in Nunavut is fun. Residents get out and enjoy the return of the sun. But spring in Nunavut also means it's time to battle activists over Nunavut's biggest food, best clothing, and cultural touchstone.
Wow!
The seal. And when that happens every year, it can wear you down.
It gets very tiring every spring. It's such a beautiful time of year. Everyone's really excited to be going to the flow edge, going seal hunting, getting whales at the flow edge this time of year. It's a really beautiful time of year. There's more light, it's warmer. So at this time of joy in our lives, it's always tainted every year by anti-seal hunt protests. Every year.
Alethea Barracks knows. She's the director and producer of Angry Inuk, a documentary about Inuit fighting back against anti-sealing advocates. She's toured the world with this documentary. Why does it matter what non-Inuit think about the hunting of seals? Protests bring the overall market down.
The exemption in the European Union ban, I think, is something that is one of the most frustrating things for me, because people think, oh, there's exemption, we're going to be okay. Even Inuit sometimes don't fully understand that exemption doesn't do anything to help our market prices. So although we can legally sell skins in Europe, it's still for a crappy price.
This year, India announced they are banning the import of seal pelts, and doing so got a tweet of congratulations from Ellen DeGeneres, the talk show host. In 2014, Ellen supported anti-sealing advocates, and Inuit fought back with the Seal Fee campaign, taking pictures of themselves in seal fur. Kapyong Barracks says Ellen should know better by now.
And then for Ellen DeGeneres to tweet in celebration that India has banned sealskin today in 2018, after she's heard from an Inuit perspective that it harms our communities, now I'm just beyond, I'm beyond disappointed. It's beyond disappointment, it's anger.
The European Union seal ban has a small Inuit exemption, one that activists point to say they don't oppose the Inuit hunt. But the rest of the ban makes that Inuit hunt worthless by depressing the overall market price. It all amounts to an outside group imposing their political and economic will on Indigenous people. And fighting that political will year after year can wear a person down. Kent Driscoll, APTN National News, Iqaluit.
Kinder Morgan was the topic of conversation for many today. We'll have more on what was talked about after the break. But first, here's tomorrow's weather outlook. Cloud cover in the Maritimes, St. John's at +1, Halifax at +7. More cloud in Kuujjuaq at -4, +3 in Happy Valley, Goose Bay. Cloudy in Sept-Îles and +3, a little rain and +6 in Quebec City. Ottawa will have cloud and be +7, cloudy but warm in Toronto at +17. Wawa's +4 with cloud. Big Trout Lake is -8 with a chance of flurries. Manitoba's looking sunny. Churchill is -18, Flin Flon -4. Brandon is -2. Gimli Harbour has a bit of cloud at -1. More sun in North Battleford and Saskatoon, both at -2. Swift Current cloudy and +1. Stony Rapids is -7 with sun. Meadow Lake is also sunny at -1.
The government is 100% behind this pipeline. It's important for Canada. It was made in the national interests. We believe that this is important for all regions of the country. We stand behind our decision.
That was the scene on Parliament Hill following the Trudeau's cabinet's emergency meeting on Tuesday. Kinder Morgan has shaken up the political landscape with their announcement that they will kill the Trans Mountain pipeline unless they get full support from the BC government. The Trudeau government continues to maintain that this pipeline will happen. With so much happening right now on the project, Tina House spoke to the Vice President of the Union of BC Indian Chiefs, who have been fighting against the pipeline.
Thank you. We're down here at the Rights Recognition and Implementation Forum here in Vancouver, and today I'm joined by Chief Bob Chamberlain. Chief Chamberlain, can you tell me, what are your thoughts on the federal government calling an emergency caucus meeting yesterday to get support for the Trans Mountain Pipeline project?
Well, I'm hoping that during that discussion that they revisited the commitment they made to First Nations and Canadians about the implementation of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. Within that document, which is a human rights standard, there's free, prior and informed consent, and it's very clear that they do not have consent of all the First Nations whose territories this pipeline will run through. And characterizing this project as in the nation's interest is a way of saying, in my interpretation, is that the Canadians would support the overriding of human rights, and I truly believe Canadians are not in that mindset.
Is there anything at all that the governments, including the provincial and federal governments, could offer the First Nations to gain their support for this project?
Well, I believe that what they need to do is be able to have meaningful engagement with all First Nations who have interests of looking after their territories, which is all First Nations, of course, and specifically where this pipeline is going to go from start to finish, as well as the potential impacts to the environment and the shipping lanes, and to facilitate a nation-to-nation discussion amongst First Nations so we could have dialogue to arrive at an understanding of each other's concerns and our views on this. And perhaps that might be a way to reach a level of certainty in terms of a First Nation collective going forward with the Government of Canada.
You've been involved with numerous protests over the years, up on Burnaby Mountain and rallies and so forth. What did you think when you heard the news on Sunday that Kinder Morgan has decided to suspend non-essential work activities on the pipeline?
Well, when that announcement came down, there's a lot of people that were very pleased with that. Of course, the ones that have been very public in the advocacy against this project. And to realize it's not just simply First Nations, but it's Canadians alike in cities such as Burnaby and Vancouver. And what I'm finding now when I've attended these rallies is witnessing a true reconciliation between Canadian citizens and First Nations people. But to the announcement itself, it tells me a recognition of uncertainty. And even though within the announcement it points towards the uncertainty of British Columbia's government, it can't be devoid of the uncertainty that First Nations are providing.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The leader of the NDP took shots at the Prime Minister today for his handling of the Trans Mountain Pipeline issue. Jagmeet Singh told reporters the Liberals broke their own promise to overhaul the environmental review process put in place by the Harper government. He says the Liberals created this mess. Now it's time to fix it.
This government is threatening to use the Emergencies Act to override the legitimate concerns and force this project through no matter what. This is not what Canadians expected from this government or from this Prime Minister. This is not a path to reconciliation. This is not a science-based approach. This is not leadership.
Longtime policy analyst Russ Diabo confirmed his intention to run for National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations. He talked to APTN News about his opposition to the Kinder Morgan pipeline project. Diabo acknowledged several First Nations along the pipeline route have reached agreements with the energy company, but they have ignored a broader group of rights holders.
I think you're talking about Indian Act chief and councillors that have signed on to those agreements, and their jurisdiction extends to the reserve boundaries. But I would argue the Aboriginal title holders need to be involved in agreements like that, where a pipeline spill of that bitumen could affect all the Indigenous harvesters. They should have a say in any kind of agreements with oil and gas companies on projects that will affect their rights. It shouldn't just be a chief and council deciding through a band council resolution.
For more on this interview with Russ Diabo, tune in tomorrow on Nation to Nation, airing tomorrow evening immediately following the national news. A South African soccer stadium has been transformed to honor Winnie Mandela. We'll take a look after the break. But first, here's a look at the rest of tomorrow's weather outlook picking up in Alberta. Fort Chipewyan and Fort McMurray, both sunny and +2. Edmonton and Red Deer is cloudy and 0, +9 and cloud in Medicine Hat. Bella Coola, Penticton and Victoria, all +11 with cloud. Some rain and +8 in Sandspit, some rain and +10 in Prince Rupert. Cloudy and +7 in Mayo and Beaver Creek. Sunny and +1 in Norman Wells, more sun and -4 in Fort Resolution. -6 and cloud in Inuvik, Fort McPherson and Tuktoyaktuk. Sunny and -20 in Baker Lake, Whale Cove and Arviat. Some cloud and -18 in Resolute, some sun, -16 in Iqaluit. It's a creative play that blends comedy and tragedy while examining colonization in Western Canada. Performed in English, French, Cree and Mohawk, Fight On premieres tonight in Montreal. Danielle Rochette brings us the story.
The 9 actors in this new production have been busy rehearsing. They will interpret more than 70 characters using masks, multimedia, dance and some historical statements.
Indian legislation generally rests on the principle that the Aborigines are to be kept in a condition of tutelage and treated as wards or children of the state.
Writer and director Guy Sprong says the driving force behind the production was his ignorance of Canadian history.
I grew up, and my generation all did, with a version that is, you know, the heroic settlement of the West and the settlers coming and da-da-da. I mean, the history books, what we were taught, we were essentially brainwashed.
Sprong was also inspired by Charles Dickens' son, Francis, who joined the Northwest Mounted Police in 1874 and served until 1885. He depicted Francis as the perfect anti-hero and hopes the audience will learn something through his character.
And he will go through a journey of learning and come out in a way that, so he relearns the history of the cleansing and essentially, you know, genocide of the settlement and conquest of the West, but he also learns to respect the Creator and Mother Nature.
Breffney Caribou Curtin is a Cree Irish actor based in Toronto. She says the humor drew her into the performance.
If we can laugh together, that's something that we can share, and it's something that allows for just a good way into having these kind of more difficult conversations and facing these more difficult truths about the history of this country.
Tyson Houseman is a Cree actor and multidisciplinary artist from Alberta. He enjoys this unique opportunity to speak his language during the show.
It feels like an act of reclamation for me and an act of decolonization for me to even be able to share this language with a Montreal audience, to be able to share this language with other members of the cast and have it be spoken in this historical context. It's an amazing opportunity.
Fight On Part 1 will be presented at Montreal's Espace Knox until April 22nd. Daniel Rochette, APTN National News, Montreal.
Looks like an interesting show. A soccer stadium in South Africa has been transformed into a celebration of the life for anti-apartheid activist Winnie Mandela. Thousands of people joined in song to honor the legacy of the woman who was often called the mother of the nation. Mandela kept up the fight against racial discrimination during her husband Nelson Mandela's decades of imprisonment. She died April 2nd at the age of 81. An official funeral is scheduled for Saturday. And that is your APTN newscast for this Wednesday. We leave you with an honor song for the Humboldt Broncos, performed earlier today in Winnipeg. Have a good evening. We'll see you back here tomorrow.